Right then, let's talk about An Alien Dies, part 3 of the Andalite Chronicles. We've done Elfango's journey, we've done Alloran's choice, now we're on to the one with the worst title. I mean, let's be honest, everything else aside, An Alien Dies. It's a pretty shit title. Nevertheless, this book is better than Alloran's choice, and if you're shocked by that, well, let's be honest, Alloran's choice was a disaster, a travesty of an Animorphs book. And I was hoping that An Alien Dies would bring us back to a decent standard of Animorphs fiction. And it does, for the most part. But let's take it bit by bit. We've got about 100 pages of content here. Where do we start off from? Elfangor has just left the Taxxon homeworld. He's left behind Arbron. He's allowed Alloran to be taken over by a Yeerk. Sub-Visser 7, who was then Visser 32, or I don't know what number he is at this point. By the way, how quickly does the Yeerk ranking system fluctuate? But put it this way. So, on the Taxxon homeworld, the last time we saw him, when he had just taken Alloran's body, he was Visser 32, or something like. Was he Visser 32? No, he was Sub-Visser 7. See, I'm getting confused already. Sub-Visser 7, and then he gets chased down by the Yeerks, having been attacked by Elfangor. And Elfangor runs. Eventually the Visser... Oh, shut up, everything. We can only assume that the Visser boarded the blade ship and went chasing off after Elfangor, because he's not far behind when they get to the asteroids. And he's already been promoted to a Visser. Is there any form filling that goes on in the Yeerk Empire, or is there just some person who arbitrarily claims, you're a Visser now. You're Visser 3 or Visser 32 or whatever. I don't know, it just seemed a bit weird. Usually promotions aren't just a snap of the fingers sort of thing. You've got to go through the process. But this is an alien race, so what the fuck do I know? But we left book 2 with, they're at the edge of a battle. There's a dome, the Star Sword is there at this battle. And the blade ship attaches to Elfangor's ship. The Visser comes in, and some crap happens, and then one of these asteroids comes along and starts to enclose them. Yeah, like that. And that's where we end. The asteroid comes and grabs them. And the Star Sword's over there somewhere. So you'd think, when we start this book here, we start with the asteroid still coming around them, and the Star Sword over there, and things happening from there. What do we get? The asteroids are gone, the Star Sword gone, and there's a black hole. And it's not like time has gone forward, because we start off basically like the next second. Arbron's gone, fuck him. Elfangor, at the end of book 2, all the oxygen had been sucked out. So, and at the start of book 3, the air has just been sucked out, so he's still like, oh, I can't fucking breathe. The asteroids have fucked off, not even mentioned. The Star Sword fucked off, not even mentioned. And there's this black hole. What? Did we miss something here? It's just that they started book 3 and thought, oh, I didn't like that last scene. Let's just change it and hope nobody reads back. Let's just say, oh, there was a black hole there. It wasn't an asteroid, there was a black hole nearby. There's no connection here. How does nobody notice this? Is it different in the three? Is it different in this one? Right, so in the 3-parter, so this should be one long coherent book. The last part of book 2, the asteroid latched onto the poor dying Jahar, and in a wild crazy pitching flashes I saw the window going dark, half covered now, half covered by living rock. Blah 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 blah, running out of air, we needed air. How does An Alien Dies start? Oh, we get some stuff about Arbron again. Right, where does the... Oh. He mentions failed to defeat the surprise attack of the living asteroids. So that's acknowledged there. Through the still clear window, I saw the huge swirl of dust and debris that marks the approaches to the black hole. What black hole? I'm looking through this, and there's It doesn't make sense. We end book 2 with them being engulfed by this asteroid. And then the asteroid is gone and there's a black hole. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I've just had my brain being a sieve again. But no, I can see. I mean, what the hell? Who wrote this crap? Oh, wait, we know. I mean, I'm not surprised, really. Have you ever seen Michael Grant's Twitter? Have you gone onto Michael Grant's Twitter? He is the living embodiment of a coin toss. You get one thing one day and then something completely different the next. He was obviously the one writing this book and he thought, oh, I'll write an asteroid. The next day he comes back and says, no, it was a black hole. No, erase history. Yeah, sorry, Michael, but I've seen your Twitter page. You're a bit of a nutter. Let's get back to the book now. So, firstly, how are they not dead already? Because all the air's been sucked out of the Jahar. So, basically, they're in space. They've just got a ship around them. They'd be dead. They'd be dead. There'd just be nothing left of them. They'd be dead. Because I'm not sure if you know what happens if a body is in space. If you go look on videos somewhere, you simultaneously freeze and get set on fire and explode and implode. All these things happen simultaneously and it's crazy shit. You need to look that up. But they'd be dead. They would just be dead. So this isn't really realistic. It is fiction, so whatever. Just forget it. Oh, and by the way, this Alloran character, who I criticised heavily in the last book, she's at it again, being just bad character. She's unconscious in space, and then suddenly she's conscious again and pushes Elfangor towards the control panel that he needs to get to somehow, miraculously. And then she saves the day again when we get to the time matrix. We'll get to that we'll get to that now, actually. So, Visser 3 and Elfangor have a deal which involves Axe putting on a helmet and going out to grab the time matrix and pull it up to the door of the Jahar. But basically, he puts a thing on his head there and jumps out into space without anything covering the rest of his body. Why do you think astronauts have full body suits that are completely airtight and sealed? Once again, Elfangor would both simultaneously explode and implode and burn and freeze. And a whole host of other shit that happens in space. But I've already said whatever to that, so whatever. He does a lasso around the time matrix because he turns into a cowboy and pulls the time matrix to the door of the Jahar. And then they simultaneously decide, okay, you've got to make physical contact with this thing to set it off. And both he and the Visser put their hand on it and start thinking about where they need to go, because apparently they know how to work this thing. And it works. And then Alloran, blessed be thine, Alloran saves the day and comes in and pushes back the Visser's force, power, fucking whatever. And I don't even know what's going on at this point. They end up in a weird world where it's like a third Yerk, third Andalite, and third Earth. This is really the only time we get to experience the Andalite homeworld, even though it's not technically the Andalite homeworld. It's supposed to be quite similar to Earth, but a bit different. Everything's a bit of a different colour. We find, I forget the name of it, but Elfangor's guide tree, Gala something, Galahalla, Falahalla, something like that. Falhalla. And we have a bit of fun there. And I've got to say, this is where we come back to the Andalite Chronicles being quite good. Because the first part of An Alien Dies, up to this point, was just carrying on the shit that was Alloran's Choice. But now we've left Alloran's Choice firmly behind us. And now we're into some pretty good book stuff. So I'm happy about this. The sci-fi stuff here, though probably not very sound, if we were to look at it in depth, is quite entertaining, quite thought-provoking, and quite an adventure. So they're in this weird world where 1 minute you're on Andal and the Andalite homeworld, next minute you're on the Yerkish homeworld, and there's these weird aliens everywhere, and Visser 3 has pets that they have wheels. I don't know how. Think about it. How would that work? I don't know, but they're aliens and it's sci-fi, so It is what it is, essentially. Elfangor and Alloran meet up, and Lauren's just like, she's off in the fucking clouds as usual. But she takes Elfangor to a bunch of buildings. And it's quite interesting, really, because Elfangor is confused by buildings and by doors. He's like, what's this door contraption and this thing? It's hollow, who'd have thought it? Elfangor, you're on a fucking spaceship that has a hollow interior and doors. Don't act so fucking confused. I mean, seriously. Again, I think it's just careless writing. But the concept of buildings and doors shouldn't confuse him, considering he spends most of his time on spaceships, which are essentially mobile buildings with doors. Do you think? There's this whole scene where they meet Visser. I think at this point he's still 32. And he's got these Mortrons, which are the aliens with wheels. And they have a bit of a fight. And they manage to get away because they run off. And Visser 32 does something elsewhere somehow. And Elfangor and Alloran go to see her mother. And it turns out that this whole human part of this new universe is conjured up by her imagination. And so is the mother. So she acts all weird, and she knows Elfangor because she knows, Alloran knows him and whatever. This is the point where we find out that Alloran is confirmed a furry. Why do I think that? Let's think about it for a second. So her mother is composed entirely of her imagination and what Alloran thinks about her mother and about the rest of the universe. And then on page 49, her mother shouts up to Elfangor, up the stairs on the right, but leave the door open a crack. That's the rule in our house when Alloran has Andalites over to play. So the mother is obviously implying that she's getting butt-fucked by these Andalites. Now, if the mother is made entirely of Alloran's imagination, then surely she's thinking about that. You see? Confirmed. Alloran is a furry. She wants Elfangor right up her arse. Also on page 49, we get another moment of just sheer stupidity. Well, not stupidity, just nonsensicalness from Alloran. Because up until this point here, she's been tiddly-deedle-dee. You know, fucking everything's yippity-doo-dah. Everything's fun and happy and marvellous with the world. Even when her world is turned fully upside down, she's just like fiddle-tee-tee. I'm happy as can be. And then suddenly, out of fucking nowhere, after she's seen her mother and is a bit upset about that, she yells at Elfangor, "Get away from me, get away from me. This is all your fault, just leave me alone." Eh? She's just done a 180. She's done a Michael Grant on us. And she just suddenly turns on Elfangor with no sort of... We're not given a reason at this point that she would think this way. I mean, I suppose we do find out she's a teenager later on in this book. So that explains it. I mean, I've got a teenage sister and she just turns like that. Bauble just fell off the tree. I've got my tree up, by the way. I hope you like it. Elfangor finds Alloran playing softball, which I assume is a type of baseball. I don't know, it's an American sport. It's probably bad, as all American sports are. He finds her doing that and she's whacking these balls, and she takes the baseball bat with her as they go off, and they find that the edge of this world is just whiteness, and Alloran sticks a hand in and the hand sort of bends and comes back at her, and that's when she says, "No, this is crazy stuff. Haven't you fucking realised that already? Not the weird patchy sky or your mother acting weird. It's the white thing with the arm bending that suddenly sets her off." I mean, what the fuck is this character? They find Visser 32 again once they find the time matrix. They go off on a McDonald's. It's essentially a pointless scene. But they go into the centre of this new universe where there's a swirling thing, and they find the time matrix in the middle of this. And they were dossing around for a bit, Alloran and Elfangor just pining about the fact that the world is shit. I'm surprised, I'm really surprised actually, that Visser 32 hadn't already made it to the time matrix, because he's on his own. He's just sort of standing there. He's probably instantly thought, right, can I see a pattern somewhere to get me out of this mess? If Elfangor takes about 5 hours after a Mackie D's, the Visser's probably taken 1 hour, and probably looks up there and thinks, right, okay, so there's clearly a pattern, I've got to go that way. I don't understand how Elfangor and Alloran beat him to it, but maybe he was just masturbating somewhere, I don't fucking know. One of the things I am confused about is the Visser just assumes that they're dead. He comes in and says, I thought you'd be dead. And he's like, why? I mean, he could say, oh, the Mortrons are attacking, but the Mortrons were outpaced with the Visser Free watching as they ran off into the sunset earlier on in their earlier exchange. So I don't know why the Visser would be like, I'm so shocked that you're alive. I assumed that if you went to that McDonald's, you'd be killed by the shit quality food or some shit like that. I don't know. They start another fight and they knock out the Mortrons because they find out if we cut them in half, they just grow back again. So they just knock them out cold. Alloran strangles one. And Elfangor's shocked that any other race in the universe has finger strength. But then we get a cringe line. And I know that I said this part of the book got better, but this brought it down just briefly. And once again, she saves him at the last minute, because this is always happening in Animorphs, where somebody saved at the last fucking minute. It's that awful trope. But one of the Mortrons is coming in on Elfangor, and the Visser's Tailblade is coming at another. And Alloran launches the other Mortron at the right time, and it knocks the other, and she saves Elfangor, and fucking... And then she shouts, softball! And it's just, oh, fucking, just go away. just die. Just age until you die, please. No, it turns out they make another... Well, they don't make a deal again, but apparently the Visser is scared of Elfangor because Alloran had seen how he fought earlier and he's scared and whatever. So the Visser agrees to go and die. That's right. He just sort of jumps back out saying, I shall have my revenge in the afterlife. Jumps out. After they've had this exchange of the Jahar was falling into a black hole, there's no way to survive, so you'll die. And the Visser Free goes off, and it's never explained how he survives this. Now, some people might say, well, it was Alloran's ship, and he would know how to control it, so he would have been able to escape the black hole. But then you think, why were they in this mess in the first place? Why did they use the time matrix in the first place? If Alloran truly had an idea of how to save the ship, why didn't he just kill Elfangor and just do the thing, rather than taking the risk of going through the time matrix? Unless, maybe, I don't know, he was scared of Elfangor back then as well, and he thought he couldn't get a surprise attack in or whatever, but it's just I'm confused. Because somehow the Visser survives falling into a black hole. Somehow. It's never explained. Mostly because it's bullshit. Right, now after this bit, they decide that Alloran will use the time matrix to recreate the world. And just the weirdest bit here that just throws it all into question is when they're talking about how Alloran's aged since she's been in the Time Matrix universe, and she now looks 18. And the solution to this problem that Elfangor brings up is when he says, but imagine that they don't... oh, hold on. She says, this me has aged. I'm older. I must be almost 18 now, judging from the way I've grown. People would notice. And he says, yes. But imagine that they don't. Imagine that you are 18 and that everyone who has ever known you expects you to be 18. And it's implied later that that works. So let me get this straight. This entire what's supposed to be home is comprised of her imagination again. Isn't that what made the mother not be the mother earlier? If she's imagining things, if she can change things just by imagining them through the time matrix, then what about places she's never been to that she doesn't know about? Do they just cease to exist? Does it just become this time matrix world they've already been in, but without the Andalite and Yerk parts? This makes no sense. See, the entire new world, the world that we all know, the Animorphs universe and everything is just part of Lauren's imagination. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But this is sci-fi, and so much of the Andalite Chronicles has not made sense up to this point, so why should I be surprised? Elfangor and Alloran get married. They live on Earth together. Elfangor abandons the Andalite military and settles down, and they get married and have a life together. And I wish we'd have seen more of this part, but we'll get to that at the end of this review. The Ellimist turns up in a human form, obviously, and explains to Elfangor that the timeline has been broken and that he's here to repair it, and it's Elfangor's fault that the timeline was broken. Something like the timeline, the great puzzle of life was broken, or something along those lines. And it turned out a little bit earlier that Elfangor had found Chapman, you know, Chapman the dick, the one who we all thought would only become a voluntary controller for the sake of his daughter's life, but it actually turned out that earlier in his life he became a voluntary controller just because he was a dick and completely ruining the point of Book 2, The Visitor. It turns out that the Ellimist allowed Chapman to survive and just brought him back with an erased memory. And he says, and I quote, oh no, that's not it. Chapman plays a part in what is still to come. And I thought to myself, what part's that then? What was Chapman integral to in the Animorphs series? Now, obviously, I've only got to about book 13 by this point, but as far as I know, most of his key stuff is done. That was in the first 5 books or so where he was integral. Even though he wasn't really integral, he was just a relatively high-ranking Yeerk, a position that could have been taken by any other sod. So I didn't get this bit. And this is the funniest and the shittest part of An Alien Dies, and it comes near the end during Elfangor's talk with the Ellimist. Elfangor says, "I couldn't save Arbron. I helped destroy Alloran and deliver him to the Yeerks to create the abomination he became. I wasn't able to destroy that abomination. I was weak, I was foolish." And the Ellimist replies, "You refused to slaughter defenseless prisoners." No, he didn't. Are you fucking stupid? Right, so, on board the Jahar, when they'd just taken Sub-Visser 7, or who was supposed to be Sub-Visser 7, Alloran ordered the hatch open and the Sub-Visser 7 thrown out to his death. Ellimist says, "You refused to slaughter defenseless prisoners." No, Elfangor was complicit in that one. He opened the hatch. He was complicit. He did not refuse. And not only that, but when Lauren's Yeerk came out and Elfangor struck a deal, he had a Yeerk that was defenseless and he killed it. I mean, oh, someone might find it someday. Bullshit. No, 2 occasions where he has not refused to kill prisoners and is actually actively gone ahead with killing them. So Ellimist is talking bullshit there. You refuse to slaughter defenseless prisoners. I can think of 2 examples in Alloran's Choice where he was complicit in the death of 2 prisoners. I do find it amusing as well that the Ellimist is always saying, oh, we don't interfere in things. The Animorphs picked up in this bullshit pretty quickly, and Elfangor as well is just immediately like, "No, you're talking bullshit, mate." So I think that's just a running gag in this series. The Ellimist comes up, "I do not interfere. You're talking bullshit, mate." We get to the end of the book and we can confirm that Chapman and Alloran were around 13 because Elfangor finds the Animorphs and says, and that's when 5 human children no older than Alloran had been when I first met her, and they're about 12, 13, so I was surprised because when I was reading this book, I was picturing like a 17, 18-year-old Alloran and Chapman, but it turns out they're about 13 each. And we can say the same about Chapman because Alloran talks to him like he's the same age as her, or roughly. So that puts a weird spin on this whole book. We finished with the book with the opening scene, well, not the opening scene, but one of the opening scenes from Book 1, The Invasion, where Elfangor has crash landed and he gives the power to the Animorphs. And he has a quick word with Tobias. It wasn't that important, he just asked about Tobias' mother. Turns out Alloran disappeared, and it almost comes across like the Elmers hadn't completely erased her memory, which means he would have been lying to Elfangor because she's saying she couldn't get over her husband and just disappeared and went a bit nuts, which implies that she hasn't had her memory erased. I mean, I know she comes back later and I forget what sort of stuff happens there, but we'll see when that comes around. That'll be interesting. But one part that did annoy me is that when Elfangor was travelling with the Elamists to the new timeline, the Elamist shows that Axe, his little brother, intertwines with Tobias, his son, because Tobias turns out to be his son. So Elfangor knows that these two meet. Elfangor also knows that the dome of the dome ship that he was on went into Earth and crash landed on Earth. I'm pretty sure he mentions that. So why doesn't he tell the Animorphs? Why doesn't he say to the Animorphs, right, I'm dying, but my brother's somewhere. Go find him. No, he doesn't. He's just, oh, I'm sure they'll find him some fucking time. Yeah. The dome was separated. This is on page 108. The dome was separated from the ship and plunged into Earth's sea. My brother, Aximili, as a young artist as I had been, was aboard. So he knows that Axe has plunged into the Earth's sea. And yet he doesn't tell no fucker. What a dick. And then Elfangor signs off after his last dickish move not to tell the people he knows are going to say... He knows that these people are going to meet up with Axe, and yet he doesn't say, he's over there. Go look over there. Or go look in the sea. No, he doesn't bother. Oh dear. Right, that is the Andalite Chronicles. An Alien Dies was better than Alloran's Choice. But as you've probably told by the way I've gone about this, it is a mixed bag. The sci-fi stuff in here, though confusing and oftentimes irrational and illogical, is quite fun. Especially the bit in the Time Matrix universe was quite entertaining. The stuff after, though again a bit weird, was quite entertaining. And there certainly wasn't as much bad stuff in here as there was in Book 2, Alloran's Choice. You still had the crappy Hollywood cliche moments, but they're few and far between. This is an average book. It's an average book. I was thinking about the score, and I'm going to give this book, it's a 6. It's a 6, An Alien Dies. Because it has its good moments. It's exciting. The latter 2/3 where, you know, I wanted to keep reading. The first third in the Jahar was bullshit. It was basically Alloran's Choice continued. And as I've already established, Alloran's Choice is a fucking awful book. But the latter 2/3 sort of brought it back to a good standard, a relatively good standard. Not as good as Elfangor's Journey, which is the best book of the 3. But yeah, 6 out of 10. Average that out. What is the average? The average is 5.666666667. So that rounds up to a 6. But if I were to scrap those scores, keep those individual scores for the individual books, but put them all together, because sometimes things are worth more than their some of their parts. That's saying, you know what I'm talking about. But if I were to combine all these 3 and give a score of the 3 combined, what would I give it? I would probably say 5. I would round it down, because I think I overestimated this. If anything, I overestimated the score on the first book, considering what was to come in Alloran's Choice. I think overall this book was a letdown. It had so much promise to it, but it didn't deliver for me. For a lot of people, I think it did deliver. In fact, I'm sure it did deliver for some people, but to me, it didn't deliver, and it's worth less than the sum of its parts. There's just so much bullshit in there. And when you consider that book 2 doesn't coherently go into book 3, that's also a mark down on the 3 books combined. It just doesn't make sense. There's an asteroid engulfing the ship. Next thing you know, all the fleet has gone, the asteroid's gone, and there's a black hole. It just makes no sense. So, yeah, overall, Andalite Chronicles, 5 out of 10. The weakest book so far, and I am very surprised by that. Right, next book. That one. Book 13. Now, this one is not going to be a 5, I can tell you that. That is my favourite book. And here it is here. Book 13, yes, you can see. Right, that thing there, obviously I'll talk about this more in the next one, but that's by David Mattingly. If you go onto Etsy.com, I think it's .com, Etsy.com, David Mattingly, who designed these covers, has done these prints, not framed, they're made with quite nice paper, but he's got practically every book, near enough, and you can buy them. So go do that. If you have any thoughts on the Andalite Chronicles, if you disagree with something I said, or if you agree with something I said and I want to back on, or if you think I've missed something, put that in the comments below. Remember to join the Discord, because on the 19th at 6 PM GMT, we are having the Animorphs Christmas quiz, and it's going to be a blast. We've got some great rounds lined up for you. Yeah, so join the Discord. Follow me on Twitter at ThomasHeap91. Go check out Chris Grind's adaptation of book 1. Get that for Christmas for your friends and family. It's over there. I'm starting to pull back on that now because it's almost Christmas now, and I think it's too late to be pushing it for Christmas, but whatever. So yeah, tune in next week for The Change. It's going to be a fantastic book, I can tell you that now. Thank you very much for watching if you made it this far, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you later.